it's Patrick Titting. How you doing? Hope you're having a great sales negotiation day, a great gorilla day. So I had a few conversations with people over the last few days, and it had to do around, things like if you look at YouTube and how YouTube gets used by creators, it's usually to construct something. And it gives you 4 or 5 ideas around finishing, say, a wall or a railing or something, right? So really what it is it's helping you finish the engineered design. Point number 1. Point number 2. Negotiation is the exact opposite. And through the research that I did with my 50 book signings, talking to somewhere around 10 to 15,000 people, 50 book appearances, hundreds every time, yada yada, plus just decades of doing this, what I've come to understand is that I can't create cheat sheets for you. Can't be done. And what I think a lot of sellers up on LinkedIn are doing right now is they're saying, I have this solution. And, I show you my methodology. And by the way, I'm not against process, okay? And I fully support things like philosophical protocols, because quite frankly, you need one in order to have a place to start. I refer to it as terra firma. Here is the thing about Sales Gorilla that hit me in the last day or so that I haven't shared with you. And that is that I know that roughly 90 to 95% of you are leaving money on the table every single week in the deals that you do. And you'd say how much? I would say at the low end it's probably 4%, and sort of at a median level it's around 11 to 12%. I was talking to a colleague yesterday who has a deal book that's in well over $1 billion, and there was no argument. So we know that much. The number could actually be much larger, because in the aggregate, in companies now that are worth billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and no trillions, just like 3% all of a sudden becomes massive, right? Here's the thing about Sales-Gorilla that I haven't been able to articulate but can now. Here it is. Sales, like if you go to a car dealership, there will be a thematic that pops up. It's kind of like personality types that come in, personality processes that you can see for people that just don't negotiate, right? They just have a certain way of buying things, right? Then you have the negotiators that come in, and they have a way of doing it. But the risk on, say, a $50,000 automobile or even one worth $100,000, it isn't gigantic, right? Now, get into your own personal business, where you either got to sell the business, you got to buy a business, you got to get into enormous capex, you have to spend a ton of money all at once on something you don't know much about, or you're having to rely on people to help you to solve problems which are causing major conflict with your big customers. So how do you do it? This is where Gorilla comes in. And here's what I want to explain to you. Where you get all these grids and checklists and probability things. In the poker world now, they're calling this solvers. In the AI world, I'm sure they've got another name for it. It doesn't really matter. But negotiation has this uniqueness about it. And I guarantee you, unless I had explained it this way, you'd never see it. No two negotiations are identical. Even with the same customer over and over and over again, the variables always change. And the bigger the money gets, the more exposure happens to the seller. Now, it can happen to the buyer, but generally it's the seller, because the seller has to interpret what the buyer wants. And if the seller gets that negotiation incentive wrong, there's always somebody who's standing right behind you, ready to negotiate a deal where they may lower price or do things differently. This is the value of Gorilla. So what you do is you go in with a list of the problems that you can sort of identify or clearly articulate that you're not coming up with a solution for. My suggestion to you is to go into Gorilla and load those topics in and wait for the videos to come up at the bottom, and then reconstruct your solution, and it'll get better. Because there's a whole bunch of things that are true or not true. And the gentleman I was speaking to yesterday said, Pat, when you talk about negotiation, you do it differently than most. Most are taking old precedent and rebuilding it. As to create sort of a loop, some kind of a whatever. You don't do that. You sit there and you talk about what actually happened in the room. And there's a big difference between creating a checklist and what actually happened in the room, because the variables within that room are just like a ball of rolling switchblades, right? And that is the value of Gorilla. Sorry, it took me a little while to figure it out, but that's why you should be buying it. Just buy a trial for $29 and sit there and think about your negotiations didn't work out well, and then drop that in. Or if you've got a brand new problem, drop that in and start to save yourself money. It's real money, friends. Don't lose it. It's that important. You take care. Giddy up. Gorilla's going to help you.